Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Drop the Mic. I am your host, Darren Jenkins. On today's show, I am coming from all the way in the Alps, Louis Mounier, director of Kabuliwood. And thank you for coming on and joining me for the podcast today. Is really looking forward to having this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Darren. Nice to see you. Nice to speak with you.
So you're in the Alps right now, but where are you originally from?
So I'm French. Maybe as you can hear from my accent, I'm from Paris. I live in the Middle East. I live in Amman in Jordan, and I just got to the Alps. It's my secret retreat. I'm just here to regroup.
And yeah, because first I kind of looked through some of your IMDb, and you've done a lot of work, a lot of award-winning documentaries and TV projects, most of it focused in that region of the Middle East. Can you tell me, so what was, I guess first let's start at the beginning. When did you get into filmmaking?
I first got to Afghanistan before going into filmmaking. I arrived in Afghanistan in early 2002, so just after the fall of the Taliban regime. And I was supposed to stay there just for 6 months, working on as a humanitarian. But I ended up spending 10, 12 years there. And I actually started a video production company in Kabul back in 2007. And this is when I got into filmmaking.
Wow. What was the, why did that being there start get you down the road of filmmaking? What made you decide to become a filmmaker?
I loved being creative, and filmmaking is a good way to express oneself. But I would say I had two motivations behind starting a film production in Afghanistan. The first one was to go beyond the headlines and the usual cliche trilogy of opium, Taliban, and burqa, and I wanted to show another facet of an amazing country. And the second reason is adventure. I was looking for adventure, and Afghanistan proved to be an amazing playground, at least at the time, with deserts and mountains and remote tribes. So it was a very good playground a good pretext for adventures.
I mean, it's such your story is so, it's full. I would say it was definitely filled with I would guess adventure for sure. Because, generally most filmmakers, I was watching a TV show on NBC the other night. I think it's called The Debris. And there was an episode where supposedly it took place in the Middle East. And I say supposedly because I'm pretty sure they didn't shoot there. And I think that's usually what happens to a lot of big productions, is that they don't choose to shoot there. They'll shoot in either California or, Australia or somewhere, and they'll kind of try to fake it. What was so important for you to kind of be there to get your story done?
It's true that many films are being shot elsewhere for security reasons, for insurance purposes. Insurance do not cover you if you take your actors and your equipment to Afghanistan. I wanted to share my experience with Afghanistan. I crossed the country on foot and on horseback, and I wanted to share all these adventures. I was playing Buzkashi, which is the Afghan national sports. I was playing Buzkashi with a Kabul team. And so I wanted to put that in pictures. And then I went to the highest peak of the country and I wanted to put that in pictures. So, there was no other way than shooting on location.
How did the locals react to your, being there, trying to document a lot of this, because I would think there would be some pushback on that.
No, actually, Afghan people are very, very welcoming.
Mm,
Hospitality is part of their daily life. It's way above religion. You see, I
mm,
mean, in the code of honor, the so-called Pashtunwali, hospitality is coming first, and they have to honor you as a guest, and then they are also very, very proud and happy to share their cultures,
mm.
share their habits. So if you want to take someone with a camera, picture someone with a camera, they will all stand in a line and be very happy to to stand in front of the camera. So the challenge is actually to get something more spontaneous and more natural. But no,
Mm,
Afghan people are extremely happy to for you to bear testimony of what's happening in the country.
mm. The I mean, it was funny because literally right before we came on the air here, a friend of mine posted something on Facebook, which kind of was some video of some of the stuff that's happening currently in the Middle East, which is terrible to see that. I was watching. So this is the you're the second person in the last 2 weeks that I've interviewed who's done work in Afghanistan shooting, and each person has done different types of work. Like they were kind of more documenting um, what it's like to be in a place where every day you wake up, you're not exactly sure what's going to happen, but you try to meet the day with as much positive as you possibly can, because it's pretty tough to kind of survive a place that gets torn down every time you turn around. There, some faction or whether it's local or some international faction is fighting in that region. So they were kind of documenting these people's personal stories, and um, it just occurs to me that there's so much history that's being overwritten in Afghanistan, and I see that you're working on a documentary about Buddhist heritage of Afghanistan. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, actually, it's my next project. I'm currently doing some writing, and I'm supposed to start filming in a couple of weeks.
Mm,
You see, Afghanistan is really at the crossroad of empires. So you have the Chinese era on one side, the Indian era on one side, and then the European and Middle Eastern influence. And
mm,
so you had all these empires which confronted themselves in Afghanistan. And if you just dig anywhere in Afghanistan, you will see all these layers of history.
right.
And somehow Afghan people have synthesized all this today and into a unique identity.
Mm,
Um, at the crossroads, yes, of cultures and empires. And what's stunning is to see that today Afghanistan is quite a very strong Muslim hotspot, but it used to be the center of Buddhism when Buddhism, I mean, came to life in the 5th century before Christ in the Ganges area in India. I mean, Buddha had 3 disciples, and 2 of them went to Afghanistan. At that time, it was not called Afghanistan yet, but
right.
in nowadays Afghanistan. And there they met the Greek. I mean, at that time, Afghanistan was Greek. And so you had these
Wow.
artists making statues, and the 2 disciples asked the local artist,
Mm,
influenced by the Greek culture, to do a statue of their own god, of Buddha. And the first statue of Buddha was actually created in Afghanistan. In India, it was only a footprint or a lotus flower before to
wow.
represent the Buddha. So the statues of Buddha were actually first made in Afghanistan. And the first stupa, the stupa is this religious building, was also first erected in Afghanistan. And this is from Afghanistan that Buddhism went afterwards elsewhere, north to China, to Korea, to Japan, and so on. So for all these countries, Afghanistan is like a Roma for us, for me as a European. You see, it's a very strong cultural spot.
Wow.
So I'm digging into all this and following some characters who are fighting to preserve their history, to build their future. Acknowledging the fact that you cannot build a nation if you don't know your history, your roots, where you come from, etc.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that, they don't know that um, that Buddhism came through Afghanistan. I don't think a lot of people even knew that, which is incredible. They always assume it starts in Asia, but or in like China and but that's not necessarily true. And a lot of the world's religions run came like you know all converged in that region, and which was just so fascinating. That if you're you know it, studying religion, you're going to be in Afghanistan at least at some point, um as things converge. What why this interest in doing the story, and what type, like, is this going to be this is not going to be a documentary, I would assume, right?
No, it is actually a documentary
Oh, it is. Okay.
for a cultural channel which is called Arte, which is both French and German, and it's like a cultural investigation into the present and the past of Afghanistan. So I'm following some real life characters into their activities, which is very challenging these days, looking at the security situation, knowing that everything that touches to pre-Islamic history is very, very touchy, and
Yeah.
that a lot of these sites are in Pashtun or Taliban controlled areas. So
Ooh.
yeah, it's a challenging project, but let's see, fingers crossed.
What goes into kind of creating, like, trying to tell that story? Do you have to prearrange permissions to be in certain areas, or do you kind of guerrilla style it and try to get in and get out before anyone notices?
Well, when you shoot in Afghanistan, it's always guerrilla style. Because you always have a shooting plan and a schedule, but in the end, nothing happens as per the plan. So yes, of course, you need authorization, and a lot of authorization from different ministries, from different rulers, local tribal leaders, etc., etc. But in the end, nothing happens as per the plan, and yeah, you need to be very, very flexible. You need to be a small team, being able to evolve, sneak through the situation. Yeah, and this is what makes it somehow interesting.
Well, speaking of things not going the way you planned it, I was reading up on your film Kabuliwood, and which one, the story sounds fascinating. I feel like that's such a oh wow, what's the word I would use? It's such a indie minded purpose behind the film, in that trying to kind of tell the story of these people trying to open the cultural center, um but it didn't go the way you thought it would go, and there was fair amount of danger that was presented to you in the production of this film, correct?
Yeah, correct. Let me say that I'm not a redneck and I'm not attracted and looking for danger, but
Uh-huh.
this is just the way things were. And
Right.
actually, I mean, the origin of the film is about a group of artists who decide to open a cultural center in downtown Kabul. And myself arriving in Afghanistan early 2002, I mean, I witnessed all this cultural scene, which was blossoming at the time. You had a lot of dancers and musicians and poets, artists of all kinds. And we were dreaming of opening a venue, a real cultural center. And we had some money from some sponsors, and we were ready to open a cultural center. But things, I mean, went astray. The situation deteriorated, and the money just vanished. So no one was ready anymore to support this foolish project. So we decided to do it in a fictitious way, in a film, in a fiction, telling the fictitious stories of a band of artists who decide to open a cultural center in Kabul. So we wrote a script, and we had this solid story, and then we needed a place to host the film being about a cultural place. And scouting through Kabul, I found this amazing theater, 1,000 seats with a balcony and red velvet seats and a golden screen, and said, okay, it has to happen here. The theater had miraculously survived 30 years of war. And it was really an amazing place. And when I first knocked on the door, the man who opened was actually the projectionist who had been living in the theater for the past 40 years. And so he became one of the characters of the film. And in the end, we said, okay, we're going to spend so much time and money and energy to renovate this theater that let's try to do it for real. So here we go, trying to shoot a film and renovating a huge cinema. And of course, things do not go according to plan because you have lots of attacks and bombings and lots of threats against artists in general, against women in particular. So all the adventures that we had put in our script actually happened on the set. So we were threatened by gunmen, and our house was riddled with bullets, and there was a bombing, and we had a few very, very narrow escapes. And so we had to readapt the script every day, and be very, very flexible. So the film in the end is very different from what we had originally planned, but we were very lucky, very relieved to have a film to bear testimony of this golden era.
Right. Wow. And speaking of golden, you guys actually won the Golden Critics Award at Geneva's International Oriental Film Festival in 2017, which is awesome. I think what you're doing is amazing because it's, I talked to a lot of independent filmmakers, but I've yet to have anyone be in a place where you, like in an area where they're getting shot at, and I think there's got to be a certain commitment to the mission to do what you want to do, what you guys are doing. And I was looking at your production website, which some of your projects are so amazing. I was looking at the project Ambassadors of the Future, which was the 10 episode television series. So is that a series that is it running currently, or?
Yes, it is running in the Middle East. Actually, I work as a director, like once every couple of years, to do my own film. And on the side, I run a communication agency, which uses information to foster positive change, acknowledging that we live in the third millennium and that today information is a vital staple, just like food and education. Right. And you can actually empower people with information. And so I have a branch of the company is established in Amman, Jordan, and we cover the Middle East, so Jordan, Lebanon, Turkey, Iraq, Yemen, all these countries that go through a lot of turmoil these days. And we empower refugees, mostly refugees, with information They step into a country, they don't know about the legislative framework, they don't know about their rights, their duties. So we empower them with information, and we showcase them in clips that we broadcast on TV, but that we also disseminate through a social network. Because it's amazing to see that all these people, sometimes they didn't have electricity, they didn't have power back in their home 10 years ago, and now they have the 4G in the palm of their hand, on their mobile phone, and they are really intensive users of social media. So it's a very good way to reach out to them. So we are doing all these clips, covering different topics ranging from legal documentation to water and sanitation. And the project you mentioned is actually about waste management. About educating children about on good behavior to prevent an intense waste consumption.
Right. Wow. It's funny because you don't think of that as a issue. Like Americans don't think of that as an issue, but it's a huge issue. It's a massive issue, and it's not only in that country but worldwide contributes to the climate change. And I just love that because I think that's where it starts to teach people early on those things, so that way they build good habits and understand the impact past their own environments. And to have it kind of, I just think that's such a fantastic project.
Thank you, Darren.
What like as a filmmaker, what are some of the things that when you're creating content that has such a specific audience, how do you go about trying to finance it? Like because as a filmmaker, generally speaking, when we here in the States as an indie filmmaker, we try to, it's different, I guess, in a lot of ways, because they're not doing such mission oriented content for the most part, and so finance is a little different for us. How do you guys get to finance these projects that, to me, obviously are well worth doing, but sometimes what you want to do and what the people who with the money want to do are kind of two different things?
Yeah. So I have two sets of activities. Yes, the one related to my communication agency is all about commissions. So I get commissions from UN agencies and foundations and NGOs, and so you have all these standards. And when I go into a project, I know that I have a sponsor. For the other projects, producing and directing documentaries and feature films, yes, as you mentioned, I'm an indie person. So everything comes from the will and the desire, the motivation that I have somewhere in my guts. So I spend a lot of time researching, documenting, going on location to identify characters, and then I go through writing a lot of documents that I submit here and there. And so far, I've been quite lucky because in the end, I was able to attract attention of broadcasters. So just like my next project, the one we were talking about a bit earlier, about the Buddhist heritage, it was actually turned into a commission by a famous TV channel. So yeah, I feel very lucky, very grateful. I think it's also due to the fact that I'm focusing on areas that usually occupy the headlines of the news, and I'm offering a different look at things. So from a journalistic perspective, it's always very interesting for broadcasters to show this angle as well.
Do you think you'll like it? I mean, do you think that at some point you'll pivot and do any other types of stories, or is this something that you think is this is your niche, this is where you want to live?
No, I'm not sure. I mean, I like to go out of my comfort zone all the time. So I'm not established, and I never consider myself as a writer. I've written 3 books, but I'm not a writer. I've done a dozen documentaries, but I'm not a filmmaker. You know, I'm doing a project, and once it's over, I don't know what is the next project. And here I'm actually in the middle of the French mountains, the French Alps, and looking ahead at the future, thinking about what to do next when the next film about Afghanistan is over. And I think I would like to shoot somewhere here in Europe, human stories with a universal message, very far away from conflict zones. I need some respite.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think it's so. Again, this was the second interview that I've done this week, and I think that you guys have something similar, which is kind of like, so many times people try to define themselves with a title of sorts, but I think certain titles don't do enough justice to like what the scope of things that you want to do. I was speaking to Gabriel Gornell, who's he does music, he does film, but his title was entertainment architect, and that's because
Nice
so
title.
much. Yeah, it's a great title, right? I told him, it's like, I want that title because it leaves you in a place where you can feel like you're not being boxed in. You know what I mean? And it can be just about anything. And it's essentially what he's doing. He is building entertainment pieces, projects, and what that means, it could mean anything. It could mean he's finding the money, could mean he's writing the episode, could mean he's producing or directing, so I totally understand. I think that's a mindset to that a lot of storytellers are starting to take, because being a filmmaker to me is almost limiting in a lot of ways. It doesn't give you the full range of things that you could potentially achieve.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Maybe storyteller is the best title. I mean, the one that I like the most, at least, and
Yep.
stories can take a lot of different forms, and everything is about storytelling. Our culture is based on storytelling, and the power of stories is very strong. And if you manage to convey emotion, then
Right.
your story is strong and your story is remembered. And
Right.
actually, we have a very strong forgetting curve. We are just flooded with information and visuals and films, and at the end of the day we can't remember them all, and we just remember what impressed our emotions. So I would say the craft of the storyteller is to craft stories, strong stories, with the one that conveys emotion.
Yeah, I actually got the I think it was 2014, 2015. I was South by Southwest and met Christine Fashawn, and she's the person who gave me the word storyteller. She's like, I think that's the most accurate thing term, because as a storyteller, it could be so many different things, and so many different types of media, and as a filmmaker, like if you just want to say you're a filmmaker, what does that mean? Like then you have to kind of say, what does that mean? Like, does that mean that you're only behind the camera? Does that mean you're writing or directing? Or does it mean that you're helping to craft the story? Storyteller is just so much more of I think a more descriptive and broad stroked term that I think fits most of people who are creating like
It's
yourself
true.
now.
It's true. Yes, I totally agree.
Um, if you weren't, if you were, when you went to Afghanistan, you weren't going there to plan to be a storyteller, but you ended up there. If you Was there anything else that you thought that you would have done instead of what you're doing right now?
No, my first job, I was working as a trader in stock exchange room. So
Really?
I looked like my life has taken a few turns, and no, I don't know where life would have taken me, but.
Mm,
Basically, I was looking for ways to go out of the routine and do exciting things. I had
mm.
spent my childhood reading travel books, adventure books, and I just wanted to
Uh,
be one of the characters I was reading about. And Afghanistan was really the perfect place for that. You can walk for days and days in the nature, pristine nature, without meeting anyone, or just very proud horsemen or people walking with their camels, and so it's a fascinating place, and
mm.
it was a perfect place for me.
What was something that so had you been to Afghanistan before that? And if not, what was the most surprising thing you discovered when you got there?
Well, there are many things, and I had never been to Afghanistan before. Although my family had spent some time there, my grandparents spent 50 years in the region.
Mm,
So I had heard of Afghanistan, but the most surprising things was to witness a game of buzkashi, which is a
what's that?
national game of Afghanistan, and buzkashi literally means goat grabbing. So it's a horde of horsemen playing
Okay.
with a carcass of a dead goat or a dead calf. It's very heavy. And the winner is a free for all. So basically, the winner is the one that manages to get hold of the carcass and drop it into a circle drawn onto the ground. It's called the halal, the justice circle. And it's fascinating to see the skill, the craft, the violence that people put, that the horsemen put into this game, and the
Mm.
devotion of the audience. And it's a total frenzy.
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard of that game before. That's
You should Google it. It's really impressive, and it's beautiful. And actually, it's somehow an arena of political tensions. And people say that you cannot understand Afghanistan if you've never seen a game of Buzkashi. Um, yeah, so this was really fascinating, and I decided myself that this is what I need to do, I want to do.
mm,
And I had to strive for many years to gain a number in a Kabul team, and finally be accepted among the horsemen. So I
mm.
played there for 3 years, and I decided I would turn my story into a book,
Wow.
into a film, etc., etc.
Oh, so you wrote a book about this?
Yeah, it's not been translated so far, but
Okay.
it was written
What's
in
the name of
French.
the book?
It was a good way for me to share things that were hard to describe or to share upon a cup of tea.
Mm, okay. Okay. Who 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 are some of your who are some of your inspirations when you're either while you're growing up or as a storyteller now? Who are some of the people that you kind of look at like have looked toward as inspiration?
Um, I mean, I'm French, so I'm bound to quote some French authors' names, such as Joseph Kessel and Romain Gary. These people, at least for the French, are quite genius adventurers and genius writers.
Mm,
And I'm still looking upon these people who serve as, yes, model, or Saint-Exupéry, who was both a pilot and a writer, and who was looking at things from above. And yeah, I think these guys are eternal sources of inspiration for me and for many others.
mm, interesting. Okay. Um, I was to go back to Kabuliwad real quick. I actually was listening to because you suggested I listen to Orange Blossom.
Yeah.
How did you find these people?
Well, they are quite famous in France, and I was listening to
Oh,
their
really?
music. And when you're working on an edit, you always tweak things and sequences, and you take the music you like, and to see if it's working, you need a kind of a momentum and inspiration to carry the sentence. So I was using my favorite music from Orange Blossom, and it was working so well I didn't want to touch it. So I called the guys, I found them on internet, I googled them, and I got their phone number and said, okay, sure, let's use it, but why don't we do original music together? So we spent some time in their studio, and we actually had some original soundtrack made with them. And they are a great band because they are at the convergence of many influences. You have people from Mexico, people from Africa, people from Asia, from the Middle East, and they all come together to bring their inspiration and come with a very eclectic music. So it was a perfect fit for the film.
Yeah, it was like I like different types of music, so I was like very interested in listening to them. They're very good. I mean, just like I my experience with that type of music is very minimal, but I thought it was really good. And I saw the trailer for Kabuliwood, and I was like, this really fits they I do another podcast where we talk about movies and their soundtracks, and so I was just like, oh yeah, this movie, this music completely fits what they're trying to do in this. And there was like some really nice fast-paced scenes in it where I was just kind of like, this was really scored really nicely.
Great, thank you. Thanks for your kind words.
What's next for you as a I know you're in the Alps there, so you're going to try to is you going to take some downtime? What do you do when you're not working? What's your way to kind of relax and unwind?
I'm a workaholic, so I don't do that very often. I run a company. I'm working with a lot of people over the Middle East, so it's hard to find some days off. But when I have some spare time, I spend it with my family. I have 2 children.
Oh, cool.
And I spend as much time as possible with them. They are not here for the moment, but with lockdown, I've been 24/7 with them for like 8-9 months, something like that. So
How did COVID impact what you were doing, like in your any of your projects? I mean, did it kind of derail anything or put anything on hold or?
Yeah, I mean, for the film projects, the film project were put on hold. I was supposed to shoot in Afghanistan like already almost a year ago. And now I'm hoping to shoot in a couple of weeks. For the other activities, the communication campaigns, everything has shifted online, which was already a tendency. It was already part of the game.
Right.
So I would say it has somehow accelerated things. I used to organize a lot of events and meetings, and now everything is online. I just do so many webinars and turning people into Zoomers.
What so a lot of people who listen to my podcast are filmmakers, and what would be some advice you'd give to a storyteller that wants to shoot in Afghanistan at some point in their career?
Well, I'm not really in the position of giving advice. I'm 42 only, and I'll give advice in 20 years from now. But if I can say one thing is, don't shoot in Afghanistan. It's too dangerous. It's too risky. It's not a good time to go. And unfortunately, the situation is deteriorating and more. And when we reach the bottom, we believe that's it. But it gets even worse.
Right.
Just like the bombings that happened a few days ago targeting girls' schools, which made 80 victims. and one of yesterday also in a mosque. And so I don't know if it's really worth risking their lives. Myself, I somehow have commitment there. I spent so much time, and I signed up on some projects that I want to carry to the end. But the world is very big, and there are many other destinations.
What from a just a filmmaker point of view, what kind of advice would you give from like a just or like a lesson that you learned on the set or production wise that maybe might be useful for somebody who's just getting ready to get started, like from an organizational or creative standpoint? What are some things that you do that might be useful to someone else?
I can say a couple of things. I mean, the first one, and when I see younger filmmakers, even younger than I am, asking me for advice, they say, "Oh, what camera should I buy?" And I think
Mm,
when all these technical questions are really secondary. I mean, we don't need a good camera, we don't need expensive equipment to shoot a story.
right.
The most important is actually the story. If you have a good story, then no matter the equipment. So people always rush to press the start button of the camera. More time you spend researching and writing, the better. The stronger the story, the better the
Mm,
film in the end. And I think this is really lesson number one for me. Another very strong
yep.
lesson is that reality is always stronger than fiction. And if you look at what's happening around, if you speak to people, then you can find so much inspiration. And when you
Mm,
see real things happening in a film, sometimes you do not believe them. You say, no, it's not possible. Just like what happened for Kabuliwood, actually. So we had this feature film, which is, let's say, very steady with a very clean image and a script. And then we have the behind the scene documentary, which I believe is somehow stronger in terms of a narrative, because all the unfolding events are actually for real. So you understand that you have real people experiencing this.
yeah, I tend to agree. I think I asked this question to a few different people, and I think almost every person said exactly the same thing. They're like, make sure that your script and your story is just tight and good, and don't worry about the technology part of it. The technology part, you can shoot with a DSLR, you can shoot with
Exactly.
cell phone these days. I mean, God knows, I mean, how many good films have come off of an iPhone now,
Exactly.
it's really about what the story is and how you convey it, so I,
I totally agree.
I love that. Uh before we go, I will just say that Kabuliwood is so this was shot when? This was shot in 2017, is that correct?
No, actually, it was shot in 2015.
15. Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was a very very long process of pre-production, production, and post-production. And
Mm,
actually, yeah, the main film was shot in 2015, but then we used some footage from 2016 and 2017, and the
mm.
film was finally released in 2019. So a
Oh,
year
wow.
and a half ago only. And what's striking is that I need to sell my film a little bit, right? What's striking is that the film is really mirroring the current events. I mean, it's still really matching the current situation, unfortunately. Actually,
Yeah,
we are just speaking about the departure of foreign troops, of American troops,
right.
and this is just happening today. So,
Oh,
yeah, I think
wow. Yeah.
it's not the film is not that old.
Wow, that's incredible that you could work on something 6 years ago, and then when it comes out, it's like it was like you shot it this year
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
so, wow, that's
And
hmm,
yeah, and all the bombings that you see in the films are happening today in Kabul, unfortunately. And yeah, I think it's a truly honest and precious picture of Kabul. You know, it's very unusual to have a film which is actually shot in Afghanistan and not in another location in a studio somewhere.
Mm.
So I think it's yeah, I'm very proud and very happy as a producer, as a director, to be able to make this film. And it's somehow a testimony for all the people who are risking their lives on a daily basis. Because, I mean, yes, obviously we took a lot of risk to make this film, but this is what people in Afghanistan face on a daily basis, you know,
Yeah,
and they are the real heroes.
yeah, yeah. And I definitely encourage people to watch Kabuliwood, because it's a good story in the sense because you have like it's you hear of all this stuff that's happening in Afghanistan, and you focus on them on this one story, this one good story that's trying to happen, and I think that's just you know that really touches my heart when you can kind of pull out these just wonderful stories out of a place that is very hard to be in right now, and give people a glimpse into, not it doesn't always have to be about bad. That's what I guess what I'm trying to say. It should be there should be some good stories that happen out of it, or at least try to happen out of it. And I think it's important to share that with American audience and other people as well.
Indeed.
And it, I believe that people can watch it now currently online, which is available on Google, Amazon, iTunes, and in demand. I'm actually going to watch it tonight. Um, I'm going out after work, get my food, and I'm going to sit here and watch it because I was like, this is this. I love good storytelling. I love good storytelling, and I love stories that people don't hear all the time. So,
Great. Thank you. Enjoy the film.
and if anyone wants to find out more about what you're doing, you can check out your website at taimani.com. Um, Louis, this was I'm so glad you got a chance to stop by and talk to me and take time out of your busy schedule.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a true pleasure.
Hey, what's the weather like in the Alps right now, by the way?
It's pouring with rain. It's like there is a storm around me, and I was so afraid that the correct internet connection would get lost. But
Oh, no.
no, there are thunders, and it's amazing.
Oh, well, hopefully it clears up so you can, enjoy what probably is really not, I'm in New York, so I know it's better than where I'm at right now. Um, but you enjoy the rest of your weekend and enjoy your downtime well, as much as you can get it.
Thank you so much, Darren. Have a
Thank
good
you so
one, and
much.
thanks for having me.
You got it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Drop the Mic podcast. I am Darren Jenkins. Please follow us on Instagram and on Facebook at Dig This Podcast. Until then, I will talk to you soon. Stay safe, everyone.